Hello, this is Saturn News Review, and welcome to the show. Today's date is March 24th, 2022. We have the Russia-Ukraine war page set up, so take a look at it. All right, let me show you that. All right. I updated on the weekends along with replacing missing text in the Biden-Harris administration page we'll do on this weekend. We'll be adding more content to the Russia-Ukraine page. Video sliders, more video content, documents, images. Still haven't focused on the missing photos and documents. We'll be doing that soon, and a few more items when I have the time. All right. We're going to begin today's episode with the nomination hearing of Judge Kentanji Brown Jackson to the U.S. Supreme Court. All in all, from day 1 to 4, it went well as expected, at least under the current dynamic. All right. Of our U.S. politics. All right. There was a lot of pushback on her record, to be clear. I've only read a few cases, about 80 pages from the committee questionnaire. And I did that while I was riding the stationary bike. All right. Now let's take a look at some remarks from an exchange between Senator John Ossoff on the First and the Fourth Amendment. All right, pardon the editing. I got some text messages on my phone while I was recording it. Should have been recording it on my iPad, but hey, it is what it is. All right, let's take a look at Judge Jackson's remarks. All right, let me put that on the screen.
Thank you, Senator. Freedom of speech, publication, assembly is in the First Amendment of the Constitution. It is a core foundational protection against censorship. It is important in our constitutional scheme that people be allowed to express themselves, that ideas be exchanged. That is the groundwork for a vigorous and vital democracy. There are many tests, many cases in the Supreme Court's jurisprudence that discuss various disputes about circumstances in which the government can restrain or regulate speech. And that decision establishes to a certain extent that if there is speech that is an incitement to violence, that's one circumstance in which the government might be able to prevent it. But other than that, short of that, free speech is supposed to be allowed to happen. And there are, again, various tests and circumstances that the court has applied in deciding whether the government can regulate the content, place, and manner of speech. But the general principle is that our democracy thrives because the government is restrained and cannot censor its citizens. Thank you, Senator. This is another area in which there is well-established case law that supports the freedom of the press to be able to write and report. There is a general obligation of truth in terms of the press, but also a recognition that sometimes there may be things that get published that aren't exactly accurate. And so the court in New York Times versus Sullivan determined a higher standard of liability for press. Things that are put out in the press have to be knowingly false. There's an actual malice test because the court was balancing concerns about libel, people claiming that they have been misrepresented in the press, with the need to allow the press to do their job. The overall understanding is that press freedom, again, is one of the First Amendment freedoms that undergird our democracy. The Fourth Amendment is one of the amendments in the Constitution that protects individual liberty by limiting what the government can do with respect to criminal processes. It restrains the government from engaging in unreasonable searches and seizures. And the Supreme Court has developed a series of tests and ways of evaluating whether any particular act by an officer in a case qualifies as an unreasonable search or seizure. Let me just say that this is the kind of area of Supreme Court and judicial review that is very fact specific, because courts, in order to stay in our appropriate role, can't make policy about police behavior writ large. Can't just sort of look out into the universe and say, we have a constitution that says unreasonable searches and seizures, so let us tell you all what that means. That's not the way that courts operate. Under Article 3, courts can only hear individual cases and controversies and decide them. So every court, including the Supreme Court, is looking at unreasonable search and seizures in the context of a particular dispute where someone has had something searched by an officer in their house, they've been seized under a particular set of facts, and they claim in the context of a lawsuit or in the context of defending themselves that there has been an unreasonable search or seizure. And so the court, case by case by case, looks at the facts and circumstances and decides. And I would say that this is the kind of analysis that takes into account a number of things, but one of the things, in addition to understanding the facts and circumstances, is understanding what is meant in the Constitution by unreasonable search. And there is case law that the Supreme Court has developed that looks at whether or not something is an unreasonable search and seizure, in part by analyzing whether there was a reasonable expectation of privacy in that item, in that area. Is there a reasonable expectation of privacy in your house, for example? If a police officer were to come into your house, you would not be able to claim Fourth Amendment protection unless, says the Supreme Court, there was a reasonable expectation of privacy in your house. And the Supreme Court has determined whether there's a reasonable expectation of privacy, for example, in your house, by looking at what areas were protected at the time of the founding when the words unreasonable searches and seizures were written into the Constitution. Lo and behold, something like your house, the court has determined there is a reasonable expectation of privacy because that's what those terms meant back then. And so if a police officer were to come without a warrant, the court has said, in areas where there is a reasonable expectation of privacy, that would be an unlawful search.
All right. Now, the hearing definitely was a change from previous nomination hearings. However, there was sort of the same political mudslinging and pandering to the senator's party and political base. Now, we believe some time ago, earlier in the century, that this moment in history would have come under a Republican administration, but it is what it is. All right. Today, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell announced today, he will vote no on her confirmation. That's also a no vote as well for Senator Lindsey Graham, who, while doing the TV circuit on CNN, said it's a different game. But even with some of the GOP suggesting a no vote, we believe she will be Justice Kentanji Brown Jackson. All right. Now, with child porn, critical race theory, abortion rights, and crime, as well as traditional beacons, seeming to be November talking points for Republicans going into the election season. We'll have to wait and see with the committee vote slated for around April 4th and any potential confirmation coming before or by Easter. All right. As to the jurisprudence, her judicial philosophy, or the Constitution being a living and changeable document, all right, she didn't really give an answer, but she did say she does have a judicial methodology. All right. Now, on the differences outside of the U.S. Capitol, was that there were no protests, no one lying down in the street. The mood outside of the hearing process and on the steps of the Supreme Court was rosy, and not like past nomination hearings. And we all should have foreseen the types of questions that were being asked or were going to be asked of Judge Jackson. All right. Now moving on. All right. Today marks 1 month since the beginning of the Russia invasion. All right. All right. Last week, President Zelensky addressed the U.S. Congress. All right. With numerous references to the United States pastime, calling on Mount Rushmore, September 11, 2001, Pearl Harbor, even speaking directly to President Joe Biden in the United States public, saying, "I have a dream, I have a need," making reference to Martin Luther King Jr. in his famed March on Washington speech. Reflecting on Ukrainian nation's need for aircraft, or more specifically a no-fly zone enforced by NATO, we'll have to wait and see how much effort or lack thereof has gone into an influence of members of the Western Alliance. But as for now, it seems to be a useless effort, especially when the U.S. citizenry has gone through immediate change as they begin to face economic turmoil, the likes to which they have never seen. Can they take any more? Because they better get prepared for it. All right. Absent to many of things except popular opinion has and continues to devastate the mind of the American people. Lingering on and on, we have a situation that has begun to regulate the entire being of our people. All right. This address was drastically different in that the Ukrainian president chose a route different than that of the address he gave to the UK House of Commons. All right. And in that speech, he made reference to a Churchillian past. All right. In this address, he made reference to U.S. recent occurrences as well as praying on the past, hopefully willing the future. All right. Ending the video production from the Ukrainian government. The end of the video and Zelensky saying, "Close the sky over Ukraine." All right. Now, Russia recently made threats or promises regarding the delivery of armaments to Kiev and stated any attacks regarding the delivery of the weapons to Ukraine, in their opinion, are justified and will be seen as a provocation and threat to the Russian Federation national security. All right. President Joe Biden came out a few hours after the speech showing deliverables of what should be delivered to Ukraine. All right. Some aid packages from the President Biden addressed on the assistance to Ukraine. We have 800 anti-aircraft systems, 9,000 anti-armor systems, 7,000 small arms, which are machine guns, grenade launchers, 20 million rounds. We have drones. And regarding humanitarian assistance, food, water, and medicine. Last week, I think I made a mistake and said 23 million refugees, and it was 2.3. I think that number now has popped up, according to UNHCR, to around 3 million. All right, we'll be looking at that next episode. But at this point, over a year assistance totaling some $2 billion with an additional sum granted in the signing of H.R. 2471, Consolidated Appropriations Act. And I think it's Section N. Let's see. Yeah. Division N, Ukraine Supplemental Appropriations Act 2022. All right. Now, this bill includes historic funding, $13.6 billion to address the Russia's invasion for Ukraine and the impact on the surrounding countries. All right. Last episode, we spoke of the financial need facing the UNHCR and its refugee partners. The need totaling was presently at the sum of $510 million. All right. It seems like a losing battle on the Ukrainian part with funding coming in from new places. All right. Now, the number seems reachable, especially with the enthusiasm coming from members of the Western alliances. All right. Now, some interesting coming from Zelensky today during today's NATO Summit, all right, was that 1%. All right. He said, "You have thousands of fighter jets, but we haven't been given any yet. You have at least 20,000 tanks. Ukraine asked for 1%, 1% of your tanks to be given or sold to us. But we do not have a clear answer yet. We just want to save our people," Zelensky said. "We want to survive." All right. Now, last week, the National Security Advisor met with his PRC Chinese counterpart. All right. Now, after this meeting, we can plainly say that the seesaw has swung in a disadvantage for the Americans, as we're constantly showing how soiled we are regarding geopolitical issues. This world might take us for a fool, but we just have to wipe it off our back and just say "c'est la vie." As Sarah Vaughan says, what will be, will be. All right? Are we compromised? Definitely. All right? But that's a conversation for another day, maybe with someone you trust over some drinks and a good time. All right? Let's take a look at the statement released by NATO head of state and government. We're not going to read the whole thing, but let's focus on two paragraphs. One we're going to take a look at now, and then we'll take a look at the other one in a second. All right. Let's go to NATO. And can you see that? Yeah, you can. All right. Let's scroll down to the response. I think it's in. Yeah, there it is right there. Let me put that on the screen for you to see it. All right. In response to NATO's actions, we have activated NATO's defense plans, deployed elements of NATO's response force, and placed 40,000 troops on our eastern flank, along with significant air and naval assets, under direct NATO command supported by allies' national developments. All right. We're also establishing 4 additional multinational battle groups in Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania, and Slovakia. All right. We're taking all measures and decisions to ensure the security and defense of all our allies across all domains with a 30-degree approach. Our measures remain preventative, all right, proportionate, and non-escalatory. We will now accelerate NATO's transformation for a more dangerous strategic reality, including through the adoption of the next strategic concept in Madrid. In light of the gravest threat to the Euro-Atlantic security in decades, we'll also significantly strengthen our longer-term deterrence and defense posture, and will further develop the full range of ready forces and capabilities necessary to maintain credible deterrence and defense. These steps will be supported by enhanced exercises with an increased focus on collective defense and interoperability. Now that's a doozy, all right? We're now hearing talk from potentates regarding potential radiological, biological, and chemical attacks. Let's listen to Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg press conference after the NATO Summit. Let's put that on the screen.
We will continue to impose unprecedented costs on Russia, and we will reinforce allied deterrence and defense. Leaders approved our 4 new battle groups in Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania, and Slovakia. These are in addition to the 4 already in the Baltic countries and Poland. So we have 8 multinational NATO battle groups now, from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea. Across Europe, there are 100,000 US troops supporting NATO efforts, and European allies and Canada have also stepped up. We have 40,000 forces under direct NATO command, mostly in the eastern part of the alliance, backed by major air and naval power, including an unprecedented 5 carrier strike groups from the high north to the Mediterranean. Today, NATO leaders agreed to reset our deterrence and defense for the longer term, to face a new security reality. On land, We will have substantially more forces in the eastern part of the alliance at higher readiness, with more pre-positioned equipment and supplies. In the air, we will deploy more jets and strengthen our integrated air and missile defense. At sea, we will have carrier strike groups, submarines, and significant numbers of combat ships on a persistent basis. We will also strengthen our cyber defenses and enhance our exercises, focusing on collective defense and interoperability. I expect we will decide on the details at our next summit in Madrid in June. Today, Allied leaders also agreed to provide further support to Ukraine, helping to uphold their fundamental right to self-defense. Allies are also equipping Ukraine with significant military supplies, including anti-tank and air defense systems and drones, which are proving highly effective, as well as substantial financial and humanitarian aid. Today, we agreed to do more, including cyber security assistance and equipment to help Ukraine protect against biological, chemical, radiological, and nuclear threats. This could include detection, protection, and medical supplies, as well as training for decontamination and crisis management. We are determined to do all we can to support Ukraine, and I welcome the concrete offers of assistance made by allies today. At the same time, we have a responsibility to ensure the conflict does not escalate further, because this would be even more dangerous and more devastating. Allies agreed that we must also increase our support for other partners at risk from Russia at risk from Russian threats and interference, including Georgia and Bosnia and Herzegovina. Working together and with the European Union, we must help them uphold their sovereignty and strengthen their resilience. We also addressed Beijing's role in the crisis. Today, Allied leaders called on China to refrain from supporting Russia's war effort. China must not provide economic or military support for the Russian invasion. Instead, Beijing should use its significant influence on Russia and promote an immediate peaceful resolution. Allies also agree that Belarus must stop acting as an accomplice to Putin's invasion. At today's meeting, leaders reaffirmed our strong commitment to NATO's open door policy under Article 10 of the Washington Treaty. NATO enlargement has been an historic success, spreading democracy, freedom and prosperity across Europe. 1 month since the start of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, NATO's security environment has fundamentally changed for the long haul, and we are responding. But security does not come for free, and doing more will cost more. So NATO leaders agreed to redouble efforts to meet the defense investment pledge we made in 2014. Allies will submit additional plans on how to meet the pledge in time for the Madrid Summit in June. And I welcome that a number of allies today announced plans for significant increases in defense spending. At this dangerous time, transatlantic unity and solidarity are vital. Europe and North America are standing and will continue to stand strong together in NATO.
All right. You heard it. Seems like this is escalating on both sides, internationally as well as domestically and in the Western media. Seems they want a full-fledged war. Some might not be comfortable with world war, and you shouldn't. But people might just get what they ask for. All right. Turning to China. The People's Republic of China is constantly being questioned. We have sanctions coming up, being imposed this week as well as last week, if I believe. when I was looking at it. All right. With China being constantly being questioned as to their thought process regarding its views on the Russian invasion. Let's read from the statement by NATO heads of state and government regarding China. All right. Put that on the screen so you can see it. All right. It's right up there. All right. We call on all states, including the People's Republic of China, to uphold the international order, including the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity as enshrined in the UN Charter, to abstain from supporting Russia's war effort in any way, and to refrain from any action that helps Russia circumvent sanctions. We're concerned by recent public comments by People's Republic of China officials and call on China to cease amplifying the Kremlin's false narratives, in particular on the war and on NATO, and to promote a peaceful revolution to the conflict. All right. Now, today, during President Joe Biden's press conference after the NATO Summit, he said a lot that the United States population needs to prepare for, because it's getting real, folks. All right. Let's take a look at the president's response to questions focusing on China as well as food shortages. All right. Let's go ahead and put that on the screen.
Xi Jinping of China. I had a very straightforward conversation with Xi now, I guess it's 6 days ago, 7 days ago, in that range. And I made it clear to him, I made no threats, but I made it clear to him that make sure he understood the consequences of him helping Russia, as had been reported and as what it was expected. And I made no threats, but I pointed out the number of American and foreign corporations that left Russia as a consequence of their barbaric behavior. And I indicated that I knew how much he, because we had long discussions in the past about his interest in making sure he had economic relations and economic growth with Europe and the United States, and indicated that he'd be putting himself at significant jeopardy in those aims if, in fact, he were to move forward. I am not going to comment on any detail about what we know or don't know as a consequence of that conversation, but tomorrow or next Monday that Ursula is having that conference with China, the 1st, on April 1st. We've had discussions because I think that China understands that its economic future is much more closely tied to the West than it is to Russia. And so I'm hopeful that he does not get engaged. We also did discuss today that there's a need for us to set up, NATO to set up, and the EU, to set up a system whereby we have an organization looking at who has violated any of the sanctions and where and when and how they violated them. And that's something we're going to put in train. It's not done yet. So with regard to Xi, I have nothing more to report. With regard to food shortage, yes, we did talk about food shortages. And it's going to be real. The price of these sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well. And because both Russia and Ukraine have been the breadbasket of Europe in terms of wheat, for example, just to give you one example. But we had a long discussion in the G7 with both the United States, which has a significant, the third largest producer of wheat in the world, as well as Canada, which is also a major, major producer. And we both talked about how we could increase and disseminate more rapidly food shortages. And in addition to that, we talked about urging all the European countries and everyone else to end trade restrictions on sending, limitations on sending food abroad. And so we are in the process of working out with our European friends what it would take to help alleviate the concerns relative to food shortages. We also talked about a significant major U.S. investment, among others, in terms of providing for the need for humanitarian assistance, including food, as we move forward.
All right. Now, we don't think the world's creditor, the Chinese, take economic sanctions against them by the U.S. or any other Western powers seriously, especially considering we have seen China and Russia creating competing financial organizations in technology, especially as the PRC seek to increase the yuan and renminbi's usage globally. All right, let's take a look at this motion graphic from NOMA, which explains the largest lenders emerging in developing countries from a period of 1991 to 2019. Let's go ahead and put that on the screen. All right, hold on 1 second. Let me get this back. All right. All right. There we go. Let me go ahead and play this for a quick second so you can see the transition from Japan to U.S. to China. Let's take a look at it. It's not playing? There you go. And there you go. All right, there you go. All right. Now the competing systems, the Chinese CIPS system. Now, that's the Chinese Cross-Border International Payment System. As of last year, the CIPS is up some transactional usage, but as of right now, it's still just a cross-border payment system and not a really communications tool. All right, but as China and Russia consider the current geopolitical issues, as well as their partners in the form of the BRICS nations, all right, if the Western world seeks economic warfare with Russia and China, could we see a new global alliance with the BRIC nations as well as members of the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative? All right, and could China and their allies pull away from the SWIFT system and use a SWIFT alternative? Now, Russia's alternative to the SWIFT system is the SPFS, all right, which is a system for transfer of financial messages. All right, now there could be a combination of the CIPS with the SPFS, could solve a lot of problems. All right, but we'll have to wait and see. All right, now we see Belarus, an ally of Russia, slowly backing away from the SWIFT in preparation for something. And we heard reports coming out about this towards the end of 2021, earlier part of December. All right. In preparation for something, as I said. All right. Could it be that the rhetoric mentioned in the joint statement by Russia and China, but what they're apparently calling themselves the sides? All right. Now we're going to read two passages from the joint statement. All right, and we're going to come back and we're going to probably be looking at this throughout the year, constantly coming back to it. But let's put that on the screen so you can see it. All right. All right. We're going to read section 2. All right, let's put that on the screen. All right, there it is right there. All right. The sides believe that peace, development, and cooperation lie at the core of the modern international system. Development is a key driver of ensuring the prosperity of nations. The ongoing pandemic of the new coronavirus infections pose a serious challenge to the fulfillment of the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It is vital to enhance partnership relations for the sake of global development and make sure that the new stage of global development is defined by balance, harmony, and inclusiveness. The sides are seeking to advance their work to link the development plans for the Eurasian Economic Union and the Belt and Road Initiative with a view to intensifying practical cooperation between EA, EU, and China in various areas and promoting greater interconnectedness between the Asia-Pacific and Eurasia regions. The sides reaffirmed their focus on building the Greater Eurasian Partnership in parallel and in coordination with the Belt and Road construction to foster the development of regional associations as well as bilateral and multilateral integration processes for the benefit of the peoples of the Eurasian continent. All right. Sounds like we have a 1984 map coming about. All right. It was wink, wink. All right. Seems as though the sides, all right, feel they can do a better job at this democracy thing. All right. Especially regarding the implementation of the UN stated goals for the future. And we'll begin to discuss a few more of the development goals today. All right. Now, the president of the EU will meet with China to discuss the Russian situation on April Fool's Day. That's the 1st, April 1st. All right. Now, with talk of cyber attacks going around, let's take a look at a 1-minute clip from National Security Advisor for Cyber and Emerging Technologies, Anne Neuberger. All right. Let's go ahead and put that on the screen.
Jen, good afternoon, everyone. This afternoon, the President released a statement and fact sheet regarding cyber threats to the homeland, urging private sector partners to take immediate action to shore up their defenses against potential cyber attacks. We've previously warned about the potential for Russia to conduct cyber attacks against the United States, including as a response to the unprecedented economic costs that the U.S. and allies and partners impose in response to Russia's further invasion of Ukraine. Today, we are reiterating those warnings, and we're doing so based on evolving threat intelligence that the Russian government is exploring options for potential cyber attacks on critical infrastructure in the United States. To be clear, there is no certainty there will be a cyber incident on critical infrastructure. So why am I here? Because this is a call to action and a call to responsibility for all of us.
All right, let's take a look at the fact sheet that was distributed by the White House. Now, the fact sheet, Act Now to Protect Against Potential Cyber Attacks. Let's go ahead and put that on the screen. Why isn't this transitioning like I want? All right, hold on 1 second. Pardon me. All right, there we go. Fact sheet. Act now to protect against potential cyber attacks. Not going to read the whole thing. We're just going to read, I think it's 4 or 5 bullet points. Let's scroll down to them. All right. Are they on the screen? All right. We urge companies to execute the following steps with urgency. Mandate the use of multi-factor authentication on your systems to make it harder for attackers to get into your system. Deploy modern security tools on your computers and devices to continuously look for and mitigate threats. Check with your cybersecurity professionals to make sure that your systems are patched and protected against all known vulnerabilities, and change passwords across your network so that the previously stolen credentials are useless to malicious actors. Back up your data and ensure you have offline backups beyond the reach of malicious actors. Run exercises and drills your emergency plan so that you are prepared to respond quickly to minimize the impact of any attack. Encrypt your data so it cannot be used if it is stolen. Educate your employees to common tactics that attackers will use over email or through websites. Encourage them to report if their computers or phones have shown unusual behavior, such as unusual crashes or operating very slowly. And let me put this on the screen so you can see it. Engage proactively with your local FBI field office or CISA regional office to establish relationships in advance of any cyber incident. Please encourage your IT and security leadership to visit the website CISA, CISA, and the FBI, where they will find technical information and other useful resources. All right. There's also a bunch of other items on the list. You can take a look at them. All right, but we're gonna keep it moving. All right. Now we're not gonna get into financial and economic numbers today. We don't have time, but we'll focus on crypto, commodities, inflation on next episode. All right. We're going to take a look at the goals. Last week we took a look and we covered some of our thought process and things we would like to see for the future in the Sustainable Development Goals 1 through 4. Now we're going to repeat those again. Number 1 was no poverty. 2 was zero hunger. 3 was good health and well-being. 4 was quality education. All right. This week we're going to cover only goal number 5. All right. Don't want to go on too long. I'm still reviewing in my free time some technology companies and innovation, as well as some patents. All right, to tackle clean water, sanitation, and as well as clean energy. All right. Let's look at goal 5, gender equality, and then we're going to tackle, as I said, the next 2 goals. Number 6, clean water and sanitation, and number 7, affordable and clean energy, on next episode. All right. Now, with this Women's History Month coming to an end this time next week, we focus, as we mentioned last week, with regards to this concept, on inclusion, access, exposure, and we're gonna throw a new one in there regarding prevention. All right, that's mostly with regards to violence against women and girls. All right, let's take a look at goal number 5, overview. All right. Let's go ahead and read through it. All right. Now, this is goal number 5, achieve gender equality, empower all women and girls. All right. Women's equal participation in decision making is crucial for COVID-19 response and recovery, but gender parity remains far off. All right. Currently, the women that are present, we have 25.6% in national parliaments. We have 36.3% in local government. And we have 28.2% in managerial positions. All right. Violence against women persists at an unacceptably high level, and it's intensified by the pandemic, as we would expect. People were in homes, people were confined. Now, 1 in 3 women, that's 736 million, have been subjected to physical and or sexual violence at least once in their lifetime since the age of 15. All right. Now, 10 million girls will be at risk of child marriage. All right. Over the next decade as a result of COVID-19, in addition to the 100 million who were projected to become child brides before the pandemic. Scroll up so you can see this. All right. The pandemic is adding to the burden of unpaid domestic and care work, all right, and squeezing women out of the labor force, all right. Women already spend about 2.5 times as many hours as men on unpaid domestic and care work. We're hoping going forward in the United States domestically, especially with this administration and this Congress, as it currently stands before election time, that they can do something to prevent and solve some of these issues, especially with regards to unpaid domestic and care work. And we hope the money just doesn't, Randy, vaporize into the air by use of nonprofit organizations and other money grabs that on the surface appear, according to PR, to be solving a problem. But let's move on. All right. Let's put this on the screen so you can see it. All right. All right. With stress reaching every household during the pandemic, the recovery didn't reach every household. But how do we address these disparities in gender? All right. We believe in equal representation across the board, not just in the C-suite, executive branches, or the political sphere, but in every industry, every sector of the employment spectrum. All right. As we can see in the overview, they're talking about representation in parliament, in local government, and in managerial positions. All right. But as I said, we would like to see inclusion in every industry, in every sector of the employment spectrum. All right. That goes from landscaping to ditch digging on up to the C-suite, as well as the executive branch. All right. Now, this may make some mad, but if we're going to live in a world where people are people and everyone can do anything, let them. All right. Attributing to one finding their passion should be our goal regarding everyone, especially for women and the underserved. But retooling, retraining, and re-education needs to be addressed from the local level and not just throw currency to study a problem. All right. As for violence against women, all right, it's a weak person to try to harm or destroy someone they perceive weaker than themselves. And the ability to lend a loving hand, at least where gender is concerned, is going to be vital in the economic mood we're moving into domestically as well as globally. But to eliminate gender discrimination and achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls does and should not mean the subjugation of men and boys. We have to begin to spur good relations between genders at an earlier age. But again, as we talked about last episode, we see the future as one of STEM, but more specifically, STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. We say get in where you fit in, but in the fitting, there has to be availability. So like my clothes, as I get into shape, things have to be altered to look better. All right. Now, we're coming to a close, and I'm going to deviate from my original quote that I had selected from Dr. Brzezinski's book, The Grand Chessboard, and read a passage from the Christian Bible. All right. Now, this isn't a religious show, but we believe in secularism, all right, as well as the unification of all religious thought regarding one's evolutionary process. So when we read from a spiritual text or thought text, could be from the Quran, it could be from the Tripitaka, the Bhagavad Gita, the Vedas, it could be from the writings of LaVey or Blavatsky. Who knows, all right? But today was one of my first cousin's funeral, all right? And we'll read one of his favorite scriptures from the Christian Bible. That's Mark chapter 2. Jesus forgives and heals a paralyzed man. All right. Go ahead and put that on the screen so you can see it. All right. Let's go ahead and begin. Mark 2. This is from the International Version. All right. Jesus forgives and heals a paralyzed man. A few days later, when Jesus again entered Capernaum, the people heard that he had come home. They gathered in such large numbers that there was no room left, not even outside the door, and he preached the word to them. Some men came bringing to him a paralyzed man, carried by 4 of them. Since they could not get him to Jesus because of the crowd, they made an opening in the roof above. Jesus, by digging through it, and then lowered the mat the man was lying on. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralyzed man, "Son, your sins are forgiven." Now some teachers of the law were sitting there thinking to themselves, "Why does this fellow talk like that? He's blaspheming. Who can forgive sins but God alone?" Immediately, Jesus knew in his spirit that this was what they were thinking in their hearts. And he said to them, "Why are you thinking these things? Which is easier to say to this paralyzed man, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or to say, 'Get up, take your mat and walk'? But I want you to know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins." So he said to the man, "I tell you, get up, take your mat, and go home." He He got up, took his mat, and walked out in full view of him. This amazed everyone, and they praised God, saying, "We have never seen anything like this." All right. Check out Saturn News. All right. We're still updating some things. A lot of information is not there due to last year's issues when we let somebody come in for an NFT project into the databases. All right. We've put the Russia-Ukraine war latest news page up. We'll be updating that along with some other items, so you don't have to keep scrolling through everywhere. You know what I mean? This is President Zelensky. We have Putin. We have Ukrainian defense. We have Russia ministry. We're going to have some slides probably coming from NATO and other sources as well. All right. It's been real. All right. Today's date, March 24th, 2022. And I'm Merrick Brown for Saturn News Review.